Perspective today on the current state of defections, especially from one party to another party. It's very specific parties this time. During the week, Enugu State Governor Peter Mbah actually defected, and this has caused a lot of concerns for people watching the political climate in Nigeria. What's going to happen exactly when it comes to 2027 elections? Is this strength for the APC, or does it actually show that defections might not mean that you're doing well, however, that you just might be amassing people with baggage, especially from the PDP? Also, who's left inside of the PDP? These questions are what Nigerians are concerned about, and that was what our perspective was about. In the studio, we'll be discussing this in another conversation. But first, I did say that you and I, Judith, were going to be talking about the fact that this has become an epidemic, let's face it.
All right.
And from earlier, remember when I asked you, does this mean that APC is this a show of strength for the APC? We're doing well, our reforms are working, and that's why we're attracting other politicians. What does this forebode for the APC? Of course, the PDP depleted. Is there any opposition left? And what does that say for democracy, for Nigeria, and the outside perception, the community, the international community? What do they think of Nigerian democracy? Interesting questions.
Very, very interesting questions. But anyway, to go in depth into this, we're joined by two guests. First, we're joining us live from Abuja is Dr. Sam Amadi. He's the director of Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. And we're also joined by Kunle Lawal, who's an executive director for the Electoral College. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. We appreciate you for coming onto the program this morning. Big issues, right? One of the respondents on our Vox Pop there said that Nigeria is slowly tipping to an authoritarian government. Now, over the week, we've seen 3 PDP governors move into 2025 and fresh exits this week as well. In your view, I have to ask Dr. Sam Amadi, is this a normal elite realignment for a systemic drift towards a one-party dominance? What are the guardrails that matter most right now as we're seeing this precedent and trend?
And good morning. First, I think 2 things. One is to say that perhaps this is a little bit more than the usual elite alignment, like you said. I mean, we've seen defection in previous republics, and since 1999, we've seen some major, movements. But we've not seen this degree of incumbents, especially governors, who don't seem to be much threatened leaving their party and joining the ruling party. And so it might signal a growing, maybe destruction of the culture of politics and the rise of new one-party mentality. Now, the other problem is that we have formally have a multi-party system. So we're not a formal one-party state. We have, and INEC is still perhaps contemplating there more parties, at least 18 political parties on the ballot. And INEC is thinking around increasing that number. So in a formal, if you're checking box, this is not a one-party state. But this is happening. The first thing is that we've seen perhaps people attribute to APC's dark acts. Maybe they say, oh, the APC is manipulating the process, Labour Party, PDP, linking them, stalling a PDP coherence. We saw that with Mbah. Mbah really worked hard to try to, make the PDP. He fought over strategic interests of Southeast, his candidate, Sam Amadi, and he lost that battle. Whether that precipitated his exit is a different question. And also the notion that the lack of free and fair, the lack of faith, the loss of faith in the electoral system is the major instigator of this. Most of the people who are driving the campaign are persons who have no confidence in the electoral system. And we've seen that happen. We've seen 2023. We see people lose elections and snatch it through INEC and to the judicial system. So what is anticipated is not that APC is doing well. It's a fait accompli. That look, no win here. You're not going to win through this process. These shows are weak. INEC is captured. Maybe will be retrieved. Who hope so. The court has fallen, basically. And so if you are a politician who is not that courageous, who hasn't got that level of ethical commitment. You will be thinking in a Nigerian rational sense and says, what because of me? Now look at the kind of statement of what's going on in Abia, how the deputy speaker will say, I can't be number 6, and my state is not APC. And it's not thinking around, how do we message, how do we campaign? Is the guy there working? In every democracy, even the US, there are dead states. You know, the other party knows that they're not going to win. Abia would look like a dead state for APC. But the APC leadership is gung-ho. They are very, say, look, we have to wrestle this out. So if you are weaker, a weak person in governor, if you don't have control, too much control of your environment, if you're not sure you are very popular, even though you're delivering the goods, you could be frightened that, look, ultimately these guys could write results. And we've seen that happen. So I think really, it's not like Nigerians are now want a one-party state, or like in Uganda or elsewhere where leadership are talking about movement. You know, let's develop ourselves, let's African communitarianism. We are one people. We don't need open. This is a default mode of a rigged, captured system where the electoral system is not reliable. And so the only answer would be that in 2027, if you have a free and fair election, and these guys with the camp lose as they may likely lose, look, take, for example, Enugu, Mbah may be doing well, but he hasn't got political capital. He's not in control of that space that much. And so if he barely escapes, a PDP or Labour or any other party gives him a fight and defeats him, then that sends a signal. Look what happened in the Delta in 2023. The former president, the former governor, was a VP and he lost to Peter Mbah. Now, if you have a re-election and it's free and fair, and in spite of the campaign, the governor loses, that will recreate the landscape. So people will now know, look, this feared federal might is not, that powerful. Tinubu fought the federal government. Maybe one would say he was under, someone said Tinubu is not Jonathan. He was under a much more tempered ruling party. And so that's really what is creating this crisis we have. It's a crisis of value and crisis of institutions, that we have no confidence in the electoral system, and therefore rational action would be to sign up to those guys who have the capacity to rig you out, and there's no consequence.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amadi. Dr. Amadi, very interesting submission there, but I'm going to come to Mr. Kunle Lawal now regarding this very interesting issue here. The APC says that, okay, it's because we're doing good, that's why we're attracting all these governors. So it would seem like they use this to measure their progress for them. But the PDP is depleting. Many people say it's because of the leadership issues and the court cases that they have regarding these leadership issues. But how much of a factor are the turmoils that the PDP going through in the entire dynamic here? Is it because of these issues that governors are leaving the PDP to the APC? And can we consider this an advantage for the APC? And what does it mean for 2027 eventually for both parties? Mr. Lawal.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. But I'd like to hinge my conversation on the first fact, which is we're trying to build a nation. We must be honest. I've seen about 4 election cycles. So it is clear that beyond reasonable doubt that there are no legacy parties in Nigeria. People are in parties because of the ambition of others, and they hope that when they could move forward. Somebody commenting earlier made a statement and said Tinubu was the man who fought and built his party and whatever. We don't have those kind of politicians. And these were the issues in intra-party dynamics that a lot of us have complained about coming earlier. Now it is clear that there's totally no rubric for what politicians can do or stand up for. It is all about winning the next election cycle. How is this critical to 2027? I think in 2027, there's going to be an implosion. And looking at it, everybody will probably join APC. I look at the 2027 election as going to be the elite against the masses. Governors can move. Doesn't mean 1 million votes have moved in one direction. It just means somebody notable has moved. When you look at the fact that, yes, our politics is financially based, then we can say, okay, this is a big problem. But what if in 2027, and just let's say presumably now Nigerians want a better Nigeria. This movement will totally not count in any direction. We saw that happen in 2015. All we just did is about the 50% participation in elections. And last time we saw that was 2015. And when we saw that a sitting government could not dictate the trajectory of how the elections went, and it could happen to the present incumbent party. I also do not clearly understand that when we discuss oppositions, or we're discussing opposition in Nigeria, we're only talking about PDP to APC. But maybe there are 17 other political parties. Why should we even hold that conversation? Looking at the PDP and its internal struggles, the PDP, I think, brought it on themselves. And what they're witnessing now is, of course, how would I call it, an avalanche of past sins. But coming down to the way opposition is supposed to, I've not seen opposition really in Nigeria, and I'll be honest. Opposition is supposed to be the conscience of the nation. Opposition is supposed to help, deliver oversight on the executive. Opposition is supposed to help teach the electorate that democracy is not a spectator sport. But what's happening right now is we just have people talking about coalitions, merger, this one has gone here, this one has gone there. So we've totally transcended in our culture of politics and the way we deal with things preceding 2027.
Okay, Dr. Amadi, let me quickly ask you, right, and let's look at the laws. There is murmurings that more governors are going to defect in the coming weeks. But legislatures, let's look at the laws. Legislators who defect risk losing their seats under sections 68 as well as 109 of the constitutions when no division exists. But governors do not face the same explicit sanctions. So does this legal asymmetric, does it incentivize top-level defections, or does it weaken party discipline? Where is the line? Where does this line in all of this? And what does this mean about our laws? Dr. Amadi.
Yes, in the US, yes, as a largely, we copied our democracy from the United States. And there, defections are allowed. You don't lose your position because you defected. And that's a conceptual problem for here in Nigeria. The Supreme Court has argued that parties canvass for votes and based on the Constitution, and they read it to mean that the people vote for the party, not the candidate, which I think the Supreme Court is wrong. The fact that parties are the ones who sponsor candidates do not mean that people don't vote for candidates. But that's what the Supreme Court has said. So the implication of that constitutionally is that when you're a governor, then we can assume that the people who voted for PDP or APC or LP or whichever party are not OT or Mbah or Shashamu. So that's the kind of conception here. But if you ask me, I think that governors should leave their offices because they defect. I think perhaps the conditions like Kunle pointed out that leads to defection underscores the fact that our political culture is not developed. In the Second Republic, we had the PDP, NPN and other, NPP, NPN and other, UPN, the JNPP. They didn't see that kind of defection because the parties people came together, developed a vision, and they were able to fight on that vision. And maybe because the parties then were somewhat geopolitically located, so they were strong in geopolitical zones and they existed that way. But the problem is that we should not solve a political crisis through a legal means to say, okay, once you leave, yes, it will be punitive. I may stop that tide, but it's going to, for example, a political party adopts a different ideology or their tendency moves against what the people in the state voted for. They voted for this guy who's going to invest in primary education and all that, and the school, the party thinks towards a much more neoliberal economic policy that's difficult for him, and he switches party. So I don't think you should necessarily say lose position. What we should do is to work hard to make parties to represent something. And that's why people talk about a two-party system de facto. Babangida tried it by law. A two-party system holds, even the US, there are people forget that in America, there are many parties that have no chances, at least for a period of time, or something different happens. And the two parties create that kind of centralizing force and coherence, so that you're either this or that. And even within the parties, you see splitters, you see some moderate, extremist, progressive wing, but they're in one party. I think this is a moment for us to focus again on how do we ensure that we build a political party that's strong. And again, if elections are free and fair, and that's really what I care about, and a governor or somebody now defects, contrary to the prevailing views of people in that constituency, they can use a referendum to get the person out if you're a legislator. Or the second kind of vote you have. I think the biggest crisis that our politics is not competitive.
Okay.
There's a lot of capture.
Dr. Amadi.
People themselves are mobilizing. Yeah.
Dr. Amadi, very interesting that you should put it like so. Politics in Nigeria is not competitive. Mr. Lawal, thank you very much for actually raising the fact that there's not just one opposition, but 17 other parties that we should consider. Let's take a break, gentlemen. We are still coming back to have this broader conversation regarding opposition. Is defection the only way to go when it comes to maintaining political relevance in Nigeria as regards opposition? What about coalition? Let's take that break and we'll be back. I'll be asking you gentlemen that question. We'll be back. Welcome back as we discuss the future of opposition in Nigeria. As over the week, we've seen a slew of defections from governors to the APC. We have two gentlemen here, Dr. Amadi and Mr. Lawal, who have been speaking with us on the topic about opposition and how rampant it's becoming and whether Nigeria is practicing true democracy at the end of the day as we move towards 2027 elections. Now, gentlemen, before the break, I had asked, what about coalition? If we're seeing defections at this rate, we have also seen big players, well, suggest coalition as a means to fight for opposition. Atiku Abubakar, for one, Peter Obi, we heard so much about this a couple of months ago, but let's be honest, we are hearing less and less of the ADC or coalitions generally. So I'm wondering, why are coalitions less talked about or less preferred by governors or by politicians? Why does it seem that defection seems the only way to go? And what does this portend for Nigeria? Dr. Amadi, I'd like you to go first.
Why are we not seeing less of it? At the beginning, it was when ADC was launched, it came with fanfare. People were, there was a momentum. And I think largely because the obedience, we are a lot more committed to that project. Peter Mbah and Atiku and others have not started speaking some kind of language of dissonance. But down the line, because of too much focus on the politics, the zero-sum politics of who is on the ticket of ADC, I think they lost the plot, in my view. If you watch what happened in 2015, the idea was to, damage Jonathan, big media blasts, and Jonathan got, submerged in those narratives. And so there was really a consensus together with a public, public policy, public opinion, NGOs, kind of, this is not working. We just need to move out Jonathan. And Buhari was presented as an alternative, clarity, in terms of weak, strong, even though history proved different. That was clarity that mobilized a strong focus on alternative to PDP, and that was the APC. This time around, that clarity is missing. The founders and the proponents of this of coalition are all driving a different way. So zoning is an issue, no clarity on it. Who is the right guy that will take on Tinubu? Who's the clear alternative? No clarity. Atiku wants to be president, Peter wants to be president, maybe Amici wants to be president. And so this lack of coherence and coming together to first define the problem and define the solution and fit the person to that solution is why there's no traction. So even if, although in the north, people are decamping to ADC, a few activities, but there's no groundswell like we saw in 2015, and that's really a problem. So if elections will hold in 2016, as they're saying, then you probably will not have a strong coalition. Some candidates may be strong, depending on what happens, but That's the problem.
Okay, then, Dr. Amadi.
They didn't have that clarity of messaging and symbolization.
Thank you, Dr. Amadi. Because we're out of time, I'd like to hear Mr. Lawal's submission here. Mr. Lawal, defection versus coalition, how does that affect voter reaction?
Well, for me, defections and coalitions do not really affect Nigerians' voters. Yes, it affected once in 2015, but it hasn't shown any general change in behavioral patterns. And I'll tell you why it isn't really. No standard party, regardless of which is being defected to or which is being defected from, can claim to have 500,000 members paying dues in the political party. Because of this absence or this void of party members, which are staunch, who believe in ideology, it's just like a simple rotation that's constantly going around. So, like I said, and like Dr. Amadi rightly put, I also too don't think that governors should be taken out of office because they defected from the party. I don't think that should be. I think that travails on democracy. But this only exists, and these defections only exist because our parties are empty. You don't have staunch party members. You don't have people that are working for a party. Our intra-party mechanisms are poor. Our intra-party constitutions are weak. And that has given birth to the position. I've run for office before, so it's clear for me to understand critically the problems, even when you're trying to blame parties. The truth is parties demand more from politicians. So parties just exist or thrive on the ambitions of a particular or in the individual or individuals.
Right.
So a party does not have a direction. And, when you look at it, it now comes into coming into voter recognition of a coalition or a defection. Right. It doesn't really change the way things are in voter reaction.
Mr. Lawal, I do have to ask you, right? You pointed out two things. You said that the parties are weak, hence why we're seeing the defections, and that the parties demand a lot from the politicians themselves. And then secondly, you talked about whether defections or no defections, it doesn't detect voter decisions at the end of the day. And so one has to look at our reforms, right? As we've gotten a new chairman who's going to be at the helm of affairs for INEC. What can we do? Because these defections in some way, to me, signals early campaigning, so to speak, when you think about it. And before Mahmoud Yakubu resigned from his position, they also did raise concerns about this early campaigning that we're seeing. We've seen the body language of all the defections, but also the structure of it from local level to appointees, entire cabinets changing their colors to the APC. What kind of reforms are we supposed to be looking at now? What should be at the forefront of discussions when it comes to our reforms ahead of 2027 and beyond 2027?
I think the first one that's key, which I've heard the new INEC chairman, Professor Amadi, mention, was developing an electoral offences commission. I think this is critical. One of the things, an electoral offences is wide, from early campaigning, which Nigeria is guilty of, or we have started playing fully within. Campaign finances. It limits, so the Electoral Act limits how much everyone can spend, but it doesn't give jurisdiction or power who to prosecute such an offense. I think this is very critical because if we do not cut down campaign financing, then the right people cannot run for office in Nigeria because the expenditure is large. The limit for running for president is 5 billion. Most candidates in the so-called overgrown parties exhaust that particular amount before primaries. Automatic transmission is key. I don't think it should be electronic transmission. It should not be something that INEC has a choice over, so that we could say INEC could do this, as it is in law. What it should be is it should be mandatory that we use electronic transmission. And for me, I think the whole structure of political parties, there's something I also do not get with political parties. I've been in a political party with an internal position, and I do not understand how parties run multiple primaries, and INEC is aware of 4 primaries, and courts have to So I think we get caught out of our elections because it's not supposed to happen in a functional democracy. Then we have one of the biggest problems. We'll continue to have big problems within politics and within our electoral laws and etc.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We wait to see how the ballooned APC will turn out in a couple of months. All the big wigs from every party is going in. There's only one thing, you got to satisfy everyone. And let's see if the promises that have been made will be delivered in the coming cycle. Gentlemen, thank you so much, Dr. Sam Amadi, as well as Kunle Lawal. Gentlemen, I want to say thank you for joining us.
Thank you.